ストックは持ってたんですけど、いや、とにかくソニーの方に移籍したかった。
先生、マイクはこれ。
そうしていただきました。ありがとうございます。
Okay, shall we start? 自己紹介の僕簡単にしますけど、先生に先ほどの西村先生のよう、そうか。
いや、もう別に紹介はお気になさらず。
ちょっと自己紹介を重ねていただければ。
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so we will start the third lecture. Dr. Kazuhiro Sakurada will talk about the revolution in medicine, predictive, preemptive, and personalized medicine. And I asked him to come here to make a speech, and because I met him several times at exhibitions and large-scale events, and I was so much impressed with his lecture and speech. So that's the reason I asked him to come and talk about this issue. And he will add his own self-introduction. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Aniga-sensei, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to be here with you. And my name is Kazuhiro Sakurada, just Aniga-sensei introduced, and I'm now working for the LIKEN as a Deputy Program Director of Medical Science Innovation Hub Program. And today's my talk is about the revolution in medicine. So maybe you have some question about my background. I'm working in the medical field for almost 30 years. I was involved in the drug discovery for about 20 years and moved to the computer science just about 10 years ago. So that's my brief background. But anyway, I would like to talk about the revolution in medicine, which means realization of predictive, preemptive, and personalized medicine. So this is the contents of my today's talk. It consists from the three parts. I'd like to start my discussion from why we need a medical revolution, and then move to the strategy, how to really realize the medical revolution. And in the third part, I'd like to talk about what is the predictive, preemptive, and personalized medicine is. So I'd like to start with the medical needs. So I think most of you may know that the medical cost is significantly increasing. And now the total amount of medical cost in Japan is about 40 trillion yen. So it's a really large number. And sooner or later, it will be bankrupt. So we have to think about something have to be improved. And one of the important points is that most of the medical cost is caused by so-called non-communicable diseases. And communicable diseases like infectious diseases and also the kind of genetic diseases, but the non-communicable diseases sometimes called lifestyle diseases. So this is the major cause of increasing the medical cost. And this is not only the domestic problem, but also a global agenda. More and more are becoming seriously ill by non-communicable diseases and mental disorder, and more than 60% of the people on Earth die by non-communicable disease. This is the reality. About 100 years ago, most of the cause was infectious disease. This is the quite big difference happening in the world right now. And the non-communicable disease to cost about $47 trillion, and the mental disease to cost $2.5 trillion. This is a quite large money. And also, we have to find out the efficient way to reduce these medical costs. So think about when you become ill or sick. So usually you go to the hospital when you feel sick. So the medicine always started from treatment. If we can cure the disease, treatment is a powerful way. But unfortunately, non-communicable disease do not cure. So that's the reason that the value of the treatment, like expensive drug, is controversial. So if we can cure that, it's no problem. So, but on the other hand, the prevention will significantly improve our quality of life. However, we don't have the system to really realize this preventive medicine. So we have to completely change some system to really go into this area to maintain the well-being of the human being. So this is the general, I think, point that we have to consider. So firefighting model, we have to go out from this. Firefighting model is like a heroic, and I think that it can easy to move the people's heart. But just imagine about when you get fire of your house. So even the firefighter work very well. Yeah, your memorial products, goods will be disappeared by the fire. So the fire prevention would be much more valuable than firefighting. So most important things we have to consider is to generate or create proactive, we have proactive intervention instead of the reactive intervention. But it's not so easy. But this is the general direction that we have to think about the future of the healthcare. So the next question is how to make the medical revolution into the reality. This is not so easy. So already maybe you have to discuss about the change of the system, social system. This is necessary for the realized, the personalized, and proactive medicine. But I don't think that this is sufficient. I feel that the paradigm shift in the biomedical science is necessary to really achieve the goal of the healthcare and the medicine. So about 2 years ago, it was September 2015, that Thomas Insel made a quite impressive comments when he stepped down the director's position of National Institute of Mental Health in the United States. He said that, I spent 13 years at National Institute of Mental Health, really pushing on the neuroscience and genetics of mental disorder. And when I look back on that, I realized that while I think I succeeded at getting lots of really cool papers, 論文ですね, and published by a cool scientist at fairly large cost, I think $20 billion. Now, I don't think we move the needle in reducing suicide, reducing hospitalization, improving recovery of the tens of the millions of people who have a mental illness. He moved to Google. And this May, he really started a new company. So this is quite important. So he doesn't deny about the present medical science, but this is not sufficient to overcome our social problem. So the method of science is based on the view that for any specific entity, there is a set of a uniform attribute. As a result, science tries to deliver general principle from the specific observation. This is the way of science is doing. But we cannot, at present, predict the personal changes by this general principle. This is the limitation of the modern medical science. So, for example, the disease is very heterogeneous. So even the patient who diagnosed in the same disease is different. So the variation from individual to individual within the population is the reality of the nature. However, the science has not developed the good method to really predict the personal changes. It's not so easy. And for But on the other hand, science needs reproducibility. If the people is heterogeneous, it's very difficult to, how can I say, make reproducibilities in a scientific approach. So that's the reason that the science use the how can I say, statistic abstraction. If we do the statistic abstractions, for example, if they have a 10,000 diabetes patient in Tokyo and 10,000 in New York, 10,000 in San Francisco, maybe the result will be reproducible. But if we look at each patient, the result is not. So that's one of the big problems. So statistic abstractions, you can imagine, will make a standard of care. Standard of care means that the average for each disease. But this is the paper published from the US FDA, clearly mentioned that the ratio of the patient for whom the standard of care are ineffective is significantly large. For example, depression is 38%, asthma is 40%, diabetes is 43%, and for example, Alzheimer's is 70%, and cancer is 75%. So this is the reality of the medicine right now. So there's a very strong need for the personalization of the medicine. So the second issue is the reductionism. This is probably most of you very difficult who is working outside the science to understand. But this is the framework of the present medicine and also biologies. Diseases are usually reduced into the symptom. So this is the kind of the way for the reductionism. And then the cause of the symptoms are reduced into genetic variation or genetic causes. So this is the background of the biology, one gene, one phenotype models. But as you can imagine, we are not machines. We are the high order of non-linear system. And it's very difficult to identify the linear causation in this non-linear system. So this is one of the big limitations of the reductionisms. And most of the science understand this problem and try to change that. And the third issue is the revision of the pattern. This is maybe most of you can a little bit understand. Do you think that alive is identical to not dead? 生きているということは死んでいるということと同じでしょうか? So whole, do you think that whole is identical to the sum of its part? Or do you think that self is identical to not the other? I don't think so. Alive is something more than from not dead. And also the whole is something more than sum of its part. Then, do you think that health care can develop from the knowledge of the disease? I don't think so, because health is different from not sick, something more than not sick. So, but unfortunately, no medical scientist understand what health is. Make a question to the clinicians, what health is. They will say, health stage is the state without symptom. This is the present explanation for the diseases. So this means that relation between A and B is asymmetric. So B is logically necessary for A, but A is contingent of B. So this is the important pattern, but likely, this is based on the mechanism, but likely to make this kind of revision. So we have to overcome this problem. And, but all of these together is based on the biological concept, which is called modern synthesis. The paradigm of biomedical science is based on the so-called modern synthesis established in 1940s. And this 1940s is quite more than 60, 70, 80 years ago. But this paradigm has remained unrevised until now. So we are still using. And this is the background of the biology and also the background of the medicine. So we have to overcome this limitation of the modern synthesis. I will go into a little bit detail in a later slide. So, sorry. So the science, so first, it's not so easy for a human to recognize the complex phenomenon as it is. So science is the way to, how can I say, simplify the complex phenomenon. This is the the science is kind of cord to, how can I say, simplify the complex system. So, and this is quite important to represent the problem that we can recognize. Otherwise, we cannot make solution. So representation of the problem is the key issue to start the solution. But if the scientific paradigm or framework cannot represent the problem appropriately, this is the time that we have to make a scientific paradigm change. This is the concept of the paradigm shift. So this is a little bit complex. Go to your copy and historical overview of the biomedical science. They have 3 different streams, and the main stream is the left side. This is started from the Charles Darwin's evolution and Gregory Mendel's genetics. And bind together, they make, I say again, the modern synthesis. And this is based on mechanistic thinking. Mechanistic thinking tried to explain the biology by linear causation and the reductionism. And the second stream is a complex science, which was, how can I say, developed by Ludwig Bertalanffy, who was really against the modern synthesis. And he really, starting from him, the complex science was how progressed, and lots of important finding was happened. But unfortunately, this complex science and mechanistic biology is not bind very well, quite independently working. And the third stream is the medical models. In 19th centuries, the disease was described by germ theory or the anatomical differences. And this was changed into the genetic disease model influenced by the Mendel's genetics, and then move into the non-communicable disease model, which the famous catchphrase is the nature by nurture. And finally, this concept moved into the life course disease models. Then I'd like to start discussing the future direction of the health and medicine by introducing you the life course approach. So life course approach means a developmental origin of the adult disease. So non-communicable disease is often called lifestyle disease. And do you think that when, at which time, or which time period is critical for the lifestyle disease? Can you answer to this question? No, it's very difficult because there's lots of causes are, how can I say, memorized in our bodies, and historical changes happen in our body. But a large number of the epidemiological data indicated that first 1,000 days of life is critical for the adult onset of the adult diseases. And first 1,000 days means starting from pregnancy to 2 years old of the baby. This is if the pregnant women have the calorie deficiency or nutrition deficiency, the baby likely to, how can I say, generate the diabetes or the other non-communicable diseases. So the care management of this first 1,000 days will be quite important to make our society healthy. And the second important issue is the maternal immune activation, which was induced by infectious disease, immune disease, and social stress. So this is likely to happen. And probably last year, you hear about the Zika fever in the Olympic game in Brazil. At that time, the Zika fevers generated developmental disorder in brain. The small brain was really generated if the pregnant women get the Zika fever. So now there's lots of evidence clearly indicated that the inflammation during pregnancy is one of the risk factors for generating developmental disorder and also immune disorder, for example, like asthma. And the part of the developmental disorder children's, which shows a symptom in early childhood, also generate mental disorder in the puberty or the post-puberty, and also dementia in elderly. So they have a strong relation between the developmental disorder and the later stage of the diseases. And this is also proven by the genetic analysis. Probably some of you know about the risk factor of the Alzheimer's dementia. It's a famous gene which is called ApoE4. And if you have this, you have a high probability to become Alzheimer's disease. But recent study indicated that the early childhood, young children's, postnatal children's, really show some abnormalities in the brain structure when he or she has ApoE4 genetic variation. So these data together indicated that first 1,000 days will be quite important for the future health. If we look at the number of the ASD, this is the autism spectrum disorders. This is recently skyrocketed. In the United States, the number of the ASD is raised from 1 in 500 in 1992 to 1 in 110 in 2007 and 1 in 68 in 2014. It's significantly increasing. And same things happen in Japan. Also, the number of the developmental disorder children is really increasing, and also the asthma is increasing. So some of the people say that this is the overdiagnosis. But if this is overdiagnosis, that's okay. But if this is showing some reality of increasing the ASD or developmental disorder, that's a big problem, because in the future, many people likely to become adult onset disease, and the cost of the medical cost will be significantly increased. So we have to think about this very well. And one of the important things is that the genetic causes cannot increase like this way, because this is so rapid increase. So this strongly indicated the environmental factor is the cause of this increase. So if I can find out the environmental factor, we can repress that. So that's a good news, so to approach that. A little bit go into the ASD. So ASD usually diagnosed by the deficit in the social communication and social interactions, and the restricted repeated pattern of behavior and interest of the activities. But this is the external observer's view. Like a parents or teacher say like this. But if we ask the ASD boy or girl, the view will be completely different. This is the internal observer's view, and this is also quite important for the future health. 当事者視点 is a critical point. For example, the ASD boys and girls feel sleep disorder and fatigue, disorder in endocrine rhythm, hypersensibility and desensitization, prediction error, flashback and negative thinking, lack of coordination in movement, perception, and affection. And also the disorder in automatization of action and perception, and combined with asthma, atopic dermatitis, and diabetes. So if we, integrate all of these information together, ASD can represent as a disorder that cannot make appropriate coordination. So this is an important point, to understand the diseases. For example, so human beings only have 22,000 genes. But on the other hand, in our brain, there's 100 billion of the cells exist. And if we think about the synapse is the, connection of the neurons. The number is million billion. That's a huge number. It's impossible for the genes to define each synapse. So it means that genes is not the problem like computer. So the fine patterning of the neurons have to be proceed by the independent exploratory process from the program. So exploratory process consists from the spontaneous movement and the coordinated selections. And maybe you have a question about the spontaneous movement. It will be like a proliferation and differentiation of the cells or the other things. But anyway, if we go to the fetal stage, always the baby have a spontaneous movement. If you have experience in a pregnancy, or if your wife has a experience of pregnancy, you know that the baby is moving. And this movement is quite important for the baby to understand self and the others. I want to go into detail. If you have a question, I can answer to that later. But this is the beginning of coordinate with the externality. Externality means other people's. So this is the framework of the, how we say, generating the healthy stage. And this type of the coordination, the concept of coordination, is not easy to explain by the mechanism or linear causation. So that's the reason that I introduced the concept of the degree of freedom and the reduction of the degree of freedom. I think each of you have kind of freedom. But if you go together and make a team, you still have a freedom, but this freedom is a little bit different from the independent freedom. So this team, the system, will restrict, reduce the degree of freedom, but create another type of the new freedom. This is the new way to explain the biological phenomenon and also the physical phenomena. And but this is the way to do that. And then maybe you have a question. What is the reality of the reduction of the freedom, of the degree of the freedom? So one of the characteristics is the synchronization of the non-linear oscillating system. So if you go to the YouTube, I will not show today, but look at the metronome on the board. And this metronome on the board have a weak correlation. And first, the metronome is show the rhythm independently. But within the minutes, all of the metronome shows a complete synchronization. This is the characteristics of the non-linear oscillating system. So synchronization exists everywhere in the world. For example, if you look at the moon, the daily rotation and the revolution, jiten to koten, is synchronized. If we go to the electrons, if the temperature is very low, the electron also synchronize and make chodendo. So superconductivities are generated. So lots of oscillations are the basis of these explanations. So go back to my first question. I know that this is a little bit difficult, but thank you for hearing my presentation. But I say that how to describe health independent from disease. And I introduced the concept of coordination and the rhythmic synchronization. And we can define the disease by different way. Different way means the lack of coordinations or loss of coordinations. So turn around. So the first part, I talk about the prediction about the individual level. It's very important to improve the healthcare and medicine. And we have to employ the proactive management instead of reactive management. And for this purpose, I talk about lots of things, but consider the process of the development. This is my thought idea. And also for this purpose, development is very difficult to understand, but try to introduce the concept of reduction of the freedom and the coordination. So the third part, this is much more difficult than the earlier part, but I like to describe this in a very easy, simple way, and dynamic model and AI technology. So based on this concept, it's not so easy to apply the AI technology into the prediction of the biological phenomena. So that's the reason that I introduced the dynamic models to explain that. And it's not so difficult. So dynamic models usually use so-called state space model. これ日本語でもちょっと難しいんです。状態空間モデル。So put the state into this state space model will be the starting point. And we usually call nowcasting and forecasting. Nowcasting is the allocation of the state of your body. So maybe you say each state of in this classroom is different, but we have to make an appropriate allocation. Otherwise, we cannot do prediction. So this is the starting point of the future healthcare. And if we can appropriately nowcast the state of your body, then we can find out the forecasting using the machine learning or AI technology, and will be the prediction power. So using this concept, your life course, 皆さんの一生 can be described like a color bubble in this slide. Color bubble is a personalized time of year. And if you like to do the data mining, like a pattern matching in the machine learning, we can describe your life course in a multi-dimensional space as a trajectory, and we can identify the similarity. So this is the so-called information geometry. But anyway, this is a quite important point for about the think about the future healthcare and medicine. So the paradigm shift in biological reasoning is to change the mechanistic thinking into complex science. And mechanistic thinking is based on the closed systems models. This, I say again, based on reductionism, linearity, and hierarchy. And reasoning is a statistic abstraction that makes reproducibility, and disease model is based on genetic model or nature by nurture models. And on the other hand, complex science is based on open systems model. This is the holistic way to describe the phenomena and nonlinear degree of freedom. Reasoning is a personal prediction, and disease model is life course model. So this is the quite big difference. And in the future, we have to bind these concepts together. I don't want to explain this, very difficult, but this is the way how to apply this compress our human being into the AI technology. So mechanistic model can describe by the action matrix, これ行列式. And then the dynamic model can describe by the machine learning forecasting and nowcasting. So this is the future structure of the AI technology for the healthcare and medicine. Okay. Maybe you will be very tired for hearing about my scientific part. And last part, I would like to explain you what is the predictive, preemptive, and personalized medicine is. This will be much more familiar for you. But let's start from the overview of the future AI-based innovation. So there's maybe there's no pointer, but how can I say? So in the top of this figure, you can see the current domain knowledge. Domain knowledge is quite important for AI. And this is maybe lots of people talk about it, like a medical records or the other biological information, so the paper data, IBM Watson's is really creating, is the current domain knowledge. This is quite important. But I say again, this is not sufficient to do the predictive and preemptive medicine. That's the reason that we need additional science, complex science, to make a new knowledge framework for the prediction. And the AI will bind these two knowledge together. And in the center part of this figure, there's a people, and the people will get nowcasting and forecasting using like information geometry and machine learning. So a little bit go to the more general, I think, view about the paradigm shift of the platform development. In the course of the industrializations, I think platform takes a very important role. In the first step was the engineer-driven hardware platform, like semiconductors and digitization of music or the movies, and CMOS sensors is for your smartphone always have a camera, and there's a CMOS sensor that is produced by Sony. And in the second generations, the creator-driven software platform become the leading part of the industry. For example, Windows, iOS, Android, like a Macintosh. But none of these, no Japanese company succeeded to develop this creator-driven software platform. This is the reality of the industrialization in Japan. So again, if we really have to, how can I say, revise or recover from the industrial competitiveness, we have to think about the sensor and AI-driven platform. And I think that this platform is based on humanity. So humanity is the quite important issues. Actually, I'm wearing Fitbit, and yeah, sure, Fitbit, and I have usually I work 55 kilometers per week. And in 1 year, I work 2,400 kilometers. And I climb 15,000 meters in 1 year. So I'm really an exercise man. But probably the Fitbit only used by people like me. And usually the people who doesn't like exercise or who doesn't want to score the, how can I say, reality of their bodies do not use this. That's a big problem. So to overcome this problem, we have to change the value that generated by the industry and companies. So I say again, the world become more and more efficient. but we are less happy. I'm not sure you think agree to this, but if you agree to this, the reason is obvious. So because the industrialization has a little respect for the humanity. So again, this is usually the Fitbit asks you to work better and make a competition and try to normalize the human being. It's a concept of standard of the health. But probably this doesn't make people happy because the individual difference is the reality of the humanity. So humanity is the respect to the individual difference. And this type of the reasoning is impossible by the present science. But technology will help this. So this is one of the important part if we really interested in applying business into this area. So the human recognition can divide it into two parts: mechanized recognition and somatized recognition. And some of the people doesn't know about the somatized recognition, but this you know about, if you know about the mirror neurons or the F5 or F4 region of our brain, this is have a very strong relation with the somatized recognition. Mechanized recognition is based on verbal, and the verbal create the value of efficiency and rationale. But this type of the verbal or the mechanized recognition have some limitation because they usually are likely to eliminate the context dependency. So this is often happen in science. On the other hand, the somatized recognition is based on nonverbal. And nonverbal is that mirror neuron can feel your affections or the emotion like myself. And this nonverbal create the value of coordinations. And as you can imagine, health is the coordination of the mind and body, and also the freedom is the coordination between the peoples, and the sustainability is the coordination of people and nature. But this somatized recognition or the nonverbal communication have some problem. There is a large contingency. We misunderstand your emotion. So both type of the recognition is quite important to understand the human being. So both type of the information stock, I'm sorry, this is TOC gave us stock, and information ambient will be combined together, will be the future humanity, and this humanity can express like a real life UX or the meta comfort. So the real life UX in medicine will be like this. Probably the primary care doctor will be the important intermediate for proceeding this real-life UX in medicine. And this doctor will use the wearable sensor data and also the medical data and do the predictions, which was aided by AI. And also the protection of personal data is quite important, but also the appropriate algorithm or that generated by AI will be also very important. And also, how can you say, the real life is also very important for the healthcare. And the real life UX in well-being, like a social robot, will be quite important target to help the human beings' well-being. For example, the social robot will create a comfortable condition in family, watch for the family's safety, and coach well-being lifestyles. And Zembo, which was produced by ASUS, will be one of the candidates. And we don't need to have a very complex robot, but simple robots, which almost similar to the smartphone, will be the candidate to deliver the real-life UX in our house and home. So the summary of today's talk about the paradigm shift in biomedical science. And I'm sorry, this will be a little bit hard for you who's not working in science by talk you about the dynamic model and life course approach. And in the later part, I talk about the actualization of the predictive, preemptive, and personalized medicine. And for this, sensor, big data, and AI is quite important. But not only this, but we have to think about the humanity. If you can deliver this humanity, I think that you can make the success in the business. And thank you very much for your kind attention. This is all that I can talk you. Thank you.
So Q&A session. So please raise your hand to ask a question. Mr. Kashi is for the Fishman. So.
日本語で。
So, one by one.
Thank you. It was very interesting.
Thank you.
Sorry for my giving you a very naive question.
Sure.
Would you mind explaining a little more to the details about the slides? On page 15, printout.
Oh, okay.
Top one, data visualization and pattern matching.
Okay.
What color and the size of the bubbles represent, and also the what the kind of basic data you should think.
Okay,
should be the very beginning.
Yeah, very important question. So I a little bit eliminated the details, but my idea is that the present data is not sufficient to do the precise predictions for the prevention of the disease. So we need additional data. So this is our mission in LECAN. So like a multi-omics data, we have to find out some blood parameters. Lots of different type of the parameters will be very important to define the state of our body. But on the other hand, do you know about the cost of the dimensionality? 次元の呪い So in the mathematics. So if you have too much parameters, it's very difficult to recognize each individual. So we have to do the reduction of the variables. The reduction of the dimensionality, so high dimensionality. So this is the critical issue that most of the medical scientists now challenging. So in the pilot study, we try to measure lots of different variables. And in the future, when the system is really realized in the social system, the number of the variables should be reduced. But this is the process. And once we can do that, we can do the prediction like this. But at present, we do not have a sufficient data to really show this type of the changes in our life course. Is it okay for you?
Do you have an idea how we should start?
Okay, we already started because we get a support from the Japanese government, and we are already starting the pilot study and the MEXT-based budget in the RECANs, and we are collaborating with the medical schools and the universities, and we get data from the patients, which get the informed consent, and we have a very strong personalized information protection system. We do not deliver any information outside the LECAN, and using this system, we try to allocate the state for each diseases. So this is not just concept, but we are really doing in this medical innovation hub and collaborating with AIP of the LECAN. Thank you. Nihongo demo, 全然.
Interesting. I would like to make a related but completely different remark to your AI part and the prediction. We have been looking at jet engines from Rolls-Royce and Embraer. These are huge, complex systems. And in that case, it is too complex to make a model of it.
Exactly.
So now what we have been doing in collaboration with these companies, we made a data-based, we call it predictive maintenance. So we grab the data in real time, 1 terabyte per flight, and we feed it into another deep learning model in order to predict the best time point in the future where we have to intervene and replace something. So it's completely different.
That's right, yeah.
But I think in terms of the technology and AI behind, it has some similarity. The question is like, do you also consider real-time data of human being?
Yeah,
Both.
sure. That's all. We are getting the real-time data of the human being, and also we have a time series data. This is critical for we have a lot of, so still we are not published yet, but we already started real human data and in the LECANs, because I'm working for the deputy program director of the LECAN. So we all have this. And that's your comment is quite important. So at present, nobody defined that which is the best way to do the prediction. So lots of challenges is important, and I think that there's lots of, different answer. It's because based on the present data, I think that there will be a best way to do prediction. If the data become enlarged, then I think the different type of the prediction will possible. So I think that this is a very good time not to deny the other approach, but all of these different approach together. And if we can make a good synthesis together in the future, I think our medical and healthcare system will be improved. But yeah, I really agree that your approach is also very important for the predictions.
Just a little follow-up.
Yeah.
What's your current sample size? I mean, how many people are involved in providing the data, and how you want to promote? I think it was part of Society 5.0, some.
Okay, so this is also an important question. So we have a different approach. So based on the established data platform, means a medical record, we are analyze the several thousand to 10,000 data, and it's possible. But again, my talk clearly indicated that there's some limitation of the parameters. So for the multi-omics data, it's very expensive. We cannot do the large number, but the critical issue is the heterogeneity of the disease. For example, if we look at the atopic dermatitis, it's look very heterogeneous. But if we go to the arthritis, it doesn't look so heterogeneous. So it depends on disease, the number of the patient will be different. And also we have to ask a top level of the clinicians who already use the personalization in the course of the clinical practice and ask him to pick up the different type of the disease for our analysis. Then we can capture different type of disease. Otherwise, if we get similar type of disease, we cannot understand the heterogeneity of the disease. So that's critical part and one of the, I say, important part for the data mining. But I'm not sure that that can perfectly work because it depends on the clinician's ability. But I hope it will work, and partly our data indicating that this is working very well. Thank you very much.
Okay, regarding to that question, I have my own question.
Sure.
In this program, I use healthy aging.
Yeah.
So this might be the related
Sure.
to the healthy aging.
Yeah.
And you collect the data. Rolls-Royce jet engine, you can use 1,000 hours operation. Mm-hmm. So from the beginning to the end, you can get the data. Mm-hmm. But it takes 70 years or 80 years to get the data. So you can increase the number of the subjects, but you cannot expand the 80 years or 90 years sample. So
yeah, sure.
Because you should see from the very beginning to the end, so 100 years.
Yeah.
So from now, the 100 years ahead, we will have the good result. But my personal feeling is it does not work for me.
Yeah, sure. That's right. That's right. That's right. So that's the point. So in the future, if we started right now, and in the 100 years later, we can understand the meaning of our life course and the disease very well, especially the onset of the dementia, but we cannot. So I think that there's some limitation in scientific approach. So we need an ecosystem that can, get the data in the time series for a very long time. And also the industry don't want to pay for get the data. So each people, citizen and the patients, have to pay for the deposit in the data. If somebody succeeded to do this, I think that our understanding of the disease will be significantly increased. But because of this reason, we focus to the first 1,000 days of the life. It's only 3 years, 1,000 days. And there's lots of evidence indicating that this first 1,000 days is critical. And also the phenotype, it can see at the second year of the birthdays. So it doesn't take a lots of time to do the evaluation. So this is the reason that we focus to the first 1,000th day. And the other part also, we are focusing to the immunological diseases and the cancer immunology. This is the different stage of the prevention. Only the patient has onset the disease, but if we can protect the progression of the disease, this is also the merit of the patients. So maybe this will be the answer. It's not so easy to get the 100 years life course data. It's almost impossible. But needless to say, if we can get that in future, probably the Google or Apple will do this after 100 years, and our knowledge about health and aging will be much more, I think, clear, I think. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I have two questions, very naive questions, I'm sorry, but first one is, what is your opinion about people getting left behind about the access to data and the access to these technologies? Because obviously it costs a lot of money to develop them and use and put them in practical use, but people in regional areas or people who can't afford to get such treatment, what do you think is the solution to? I think it relates to your page 18 about normalization or standardization of healthcare, but what is your opinion on that first?
Okay, so we are the scientists and we try to identify like rules and algorithms, but this is not sufficient to really actualize the personalized, precise medicine. So we have to, how can I say, this is a kind of the circle. So the people in the center, if we can get the data from the people, then they will be accumulated and we make a big database. We already discussed that if we have 100-year data, our prediction will be, how can I say, amazing, probably. But one of the important points is that we haven't had the motivation for the people to really, how can I say, capture the data. So if the venture company, some people say that he started the company recently, but if the company can create a business that can motivate the people to measure their vital data and accumulate it into the database, and this will be the successor for the healthcare and medicine. So this is also I'm interested in, but at this time point, we cannot use AI technology because we don't have data right now. Can you imagine? So we have to have the services without using AI, but that can influence the people, and that can, how can I say, capture data. But already Google and Apple is doing this, as you can imagine. So if Japan would like to, how can I say, succeed in this area, some company should make this first access. And then if they start making a circle, and then will be de facto standard of the healthcare in Japan if you succeed to do this. This is my thought of how to actualize, not science, but the system. So not only science, but the value, I think, generation, creation, and that's the reason I talk about humanity. So is it okay for your question?
My question was more towards the access from a patient's point of view to, so I understand about the getting people motivated to provide data for scientists and for research, but more from a point of view of a patient who can't afford such, and I guess that relates to my second question about where, if we go into the territory where the AI or we have robots doing the treatment or telling us what disease we have, or etc., I find that there is a lot of people who find comfort in talking to a real person or a real doctor about their diseases or their sickness. So what do you think is the balance or the needed balance between educating and increasing the number of quality doctors, human doctors, and the balance of providing AI sort of operated robots?
Okay, so my opinion is that AI cannot replace the clinicians because I talk about the non-verbal communication is quite important. So I think that the good clinicians always have, how can I say, aligned with the patients. And so not only the algorithm, but how can I say, aligned with the patient with the critical issues, but the knowledge of each clinician is different, unfortunately, because the number of the patient that they see in the past is different. Young clinician doesn't have opportunity to see lots of patients, and maybe some clinicians, the clinic is only see the limited number of the patients. So if the AI can help to tell the clinician that the patient that in front of you will be categorized or allocated the state like this, then I think that the clinician can help their decisions making. So I think that AI will be in the background. And another important issue is that how can I say, it's very difficult to show the reproducibility in personalized prediction. So if we use the statistic abstraction, reproducibility, it will be very easy, but to show the reproducibility. So the personalized prediction, which is driven by AI, have always some limitation because AI algorithm is created from the samples, not from the total number of the patients. So always there make a mistake. So in the middle, clinician will be the intermediate, that maybe the AI decision will be wrong. But if this system works for quite a long time, like 20, 40 years, I think that the AI algorithm will become much better than the algorithm at present. And I think that will be more automatic. But even at that time, human relation will be the critic for the cure of the patient. So I don't think that AI can replace easily. So this is my mind, but maybe you have a different opinion.
Hopefully people will provide that balance
That
instead
balance,
of going
exactly,
overboard.
exactly.
Yeah.
Balance
Thank
is
you.
quite important.
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you. It's great.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question. I think DNA is very important data, and Watson is using DNA with Tokyo University, and they find some disease prescription.
Yeah. Okay.
So how do you think about it? And the second question is how can we use like us such as a venture company DNA data?
Okay, that's great questions. And so first, how can I say, measure all of my full genome sequence. That's all I know about my full genome sequence. And it's really have some limitation for the perfect prediction of my health, only from the genetic informations. So one of the example is that the identical twin, Ichiran-sei sausage, have almost identical DNA, but their disease phenotype is quite different. So this means that some of the personality or some part of the phenotype is very, I think, strongly related to DNA. But some part of the phenotype is not have a very strong relation with the DNA information. I talk about the brains and exploratory process. So for example, if your blood type, A gata, B gata, can be easily defined from your genetic informations. And also for your eye color, whether you have a blue eye or black or brown, you can define from the DNA sequence. But if you think about the non-communicable disease onset, it's very difficult to predict from the DNA sequence. So this is a hierarchy problem. DNA is in the bottom of the hierarchy, and the actual things in the higher hierarchy, your, how can I say, a headache or some information or some things will be in a higher hierarchy. So the relation between the DNA and the phenotype have a non-linear relation. So that's reason that the causal relations doesn't identify in some part of the phenotype. So if you understand this very well, maybe you can use the DNA information in business. So that's the reality. A little bit complex, but I try to tell you the truth of the DNA information. So that's 日本語で説明しましょうか。DNA 情報だからその遺伝子で決まっているその体のケースってあるんですよね。だからそれは確かに遺伝情報ですぐ決めちゃえるんですよ。だからお酒が強いとか弱いとか血液型っていうのは遺伝子情報でそのまま決まってくるんですね。だけどその生活習慣病みたいに非常に複雑な病気の場合はなかなかその遺伝子と直接相関が出ないために本当にその遺伝子の関係は小さくて、ただその遺伝子の違いがその病気に現れているか無関係じゃないですね。ただまだそこを推論するだけの技術がないために、まあそこはこれからのこういうその今日ちゃんと説明しますと、そのよりバイオマーカーのようにね、そのよりヒエラルキーの上位の情報を使って DNA の情報をきちっと分けられれば、その DNA の情報の意味が今よりもっと活用できる将来できるだろう。だからまあそういう多分両方の関係が多分あるんだろうと。こういう今日僕がお話したのはどっちかというとマクロで身体状態を推論しましょうと。ミクロからいくんですね、マクロだけど。でミクロの情報がいらないわけじゃなくて、やっぱその間の関係がまた医学の革命を多分起こすだろうと思います。ちょっと難しいですけど、ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much for your presentation. I've conducted healthcare-related research in Scandinavian countries, and in those countries, what is normalization in the humanity is a keyword of them, and they have in Scandinavian countries are focusing on citizen engagement or community development. To tell us, I'm co-working with Watanabe Sensei, maybe in Riken Kobe.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And so currently, Riken is focusing on enhancing relations with communities. And maybe from your perspective, from science and community is very important. And maybe you also are in charge of community development in Yokohama.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And what your perspective in this area?
Okay, thank you very much. So also I have a good relation with Watanabe Sensei, and his concept is excellent. And I'm sure that the communication will be the key to make people healthy. So in the Scandinavian countries, I think that it's a little bit, the culture is different from the, how can I say, globalized, like a US or the Anglo-Saxon based culture. And the communication will be the key issue to how can I say establish the good society. And also this type of the system will be also important to make people healthy. Because I tell here, but the healthy stage of each individual is the coordination of our mind and body. But the mind and body coordination is related to the human relation. So if you are working with the people who you hate him or she, it will be very stressful. So if we can coordinate with the people very well, that will be one of the issues. And also the medical care or the intervention. Also, I talked about in a previous question, but also the relation with the clinician and the patient, also the good human relation will be the key issue to cure the diseases. So I think that in the middle of the medical innovation, this kind of the communication and making the community that help the health of the society is quite important. And I hope that Watanabe-san will make great improvement in that area. So thank you very much.
Watanabe Sensei at Riken Kobe would come September 23rd here to make a presentation.
Oh, okay, great, thanks.
And at that time we will discuss this issue further. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I have one question about the personalized medicine. When will it become cost-effective? Currently, normal medication is cost-effective, so that's the reason we can apply it. Mm-hmm. But for personal medicine, at this moment, probably too expensive. That's my understanding. So when will it become cost-effective? Okay, so it depends on the standpoint. So probably you know about the Opdivo, the checkpoint inhibitor of the cancer intervention drug. This is a, how can I say, dramatic drug effect. And some patients' cancers will be reduced significantly and they survive for a very long time. But this drug do not work for all of the cancer patients. So some of the cancer patients become wrong, means not better, but some side effects happen. So if we can diagnose each patient before the intervention of the Opdivo, then I think Opdivo is a very expensive drug. So if we can reduce, also we can reduce the medical cost and also reduce the, improve the quality of life of the patients. And so I think that this type of approach will be started immediately to, how can I say, standardize the treatment. And on the other hand, about the personalized healthcare, this is the like a Fitbit or the other sensor system. I think that if the people would like to put these and would like to visualize their body state, I think that it doesn't cost too much.
Yeah, it's not so expensive. And so I think personalization is not, I don't think that it will be cost too much if we focus on healthcare. And also the total medical cost will reduce by personalization. Thank you very much for the comments.
Any other?
Thank you very much. My question may be very naive. So in the future, maybe everyone will sense us, so we can provide our data to a hospital or our doctors. So is there any risk? So so in my opinion, I think we provide our secret.
Sure.
Yes, our DNA, our gene to someone we didn't know very well. So is there any risk of that?
Okay, so that's also a very good question. So I think that first, all of the medical data should be deal with the organization who care about the protection of the personalized information very well. Otherwise, I think that it will be very dangerous. And for example, like Apple is now developing differential privacy to protect the personal data. And so for example, if the data do not have your name or your address or even your birthday, sometimes if somebody knows about your personal information very well, you can identify your data from this personal information. So the protection of the personal data is not always perfect. So always the company or the organization who deal with this personal data have to think about that. And especially in the past, evidence-based medicine is to try to find out the normalization, means the statistic abstraction. Statistic abstraction is the abstraction, so cannot identify the personal information. But if we proceed the personalized medicine, the data cannot abstract too much. Have to, how can I say, keep the basic structure. Means that they have some possibility that this kind of information will be, how can I say, hacked by some people and identified and disclosed to the public. So, we have to think about that, and we have to develop the technologies to perfectly protect this kind of personal information. That's the good timing. And also, you have to make a decision that whether you are committed to this kind of data-driven business or not. So it's your, I think, opinion. So that's quite important. You should not be forced by somebody to deliver the data. So, but for making a decision, you have to know about the data protection technologies very well. Otherwise, which level of the information will be delivered to the public or not will be the key issues. But so I think many industries try to develop the good technologies to protect the personal information. So I think in the near future it will be possible. I
would like to make a small comment because I thought it's very interesting. In a slightly different way, I want to answer. Yeah. Comment. In Europe, there has been the question on how to determine the car insurance. Yeah? So maybe currently you have a certain level of car insurance, and some companies said, you know, we give an incentive to lower your car insurance if you provide us your driving data. It means the company puts a mechanism into your car and records your driving.
Sure.
So if you drive in a very eco-friendly and positive way, then your insurance will drop. If you drive very aggressive, it will increase. Anyway, so this is a kind of, you give up your privacy for a benefit. And right, so my question following up to this comment would be, can you imagine that in the future some companies would say, you know what, you give us all your private data, all your secrets. On the other hand, we can lower, like you would be a good case of a low health insurance because you are doing good. And yeah, so it's a business. On the other hand, maybe some people have concerns about it.
That's right. The benefit and how can I say the disclosure of personal information is a kind of trade-off. If you like to use this system, you have to, how can I say, but yeah, so this is a balance. But I always think that from the industrial side, I think have to make a great effort to try to protect the personal information. And if you can trust that the industries, you are very happy to, how can I say, support the business and data-driven business. So, but always, there's no perfect system. So benefit and how can I say, risk is kind of trade-off. Yeah. Thanks for the comments.
My own question regarding to the methodology, the view of the research methodology.
Okay.
And Ms. Nishimura mentioned the ecosystem for the medical innovation. And Professor Predinger used drone and AI as some kind of the future mapping. And my question is like this. Mr. Sakurada mentioned to reduce the medical costs, prevention is important. But medical service and prevention might be two different things. So that is my assumption. It's not my assumption. There's one person who attended this forum, the Professor Natori always mentioned medical service and prevention are two different things. And to reduce the medical costs, the prevention means quite a lot. And also he mentioned, you mentioned the statistical work. You are a little bit skeptical about the statistical work, but you don't use the name of the epidemiology. But in Japan, the big data and AI and epidemiology might be combined. And they said they would solve that kind of combination would solve the medical cost problem or aging issues. But I wish to know their views on this kind of the present status of the research.
Yeah, there's a clear, I think, view exists. I'm working for the pharmaceutical for more than 20 years. And the pharmaceutical is now facing stagnation. Stagnation means that they cannot develop the new drug that is effective because they are using based on evidence-based medicine is the statistical abstraction. So if we can identify the heterogeneity of disease in an appropriate way, then the drug discovery will significantly improve and make lots of innovation. So the personalization is not only for the healthcare, but also to make a great innovation in the drug discoveries. And also, another important point is that the many pharmaceuticals, the symptomatic approach is finished in more than 20 years ago and tried to go to the later stage of the disease, but they haven't made a good success. Because in the later stage, the disease becomes very complex. So the another way is to go a little bit, earlier stage. And this is also the critical needs that exist. We can terminate a disease in an early stage and find out the good drug, then can do that. That would be excellent. And also the preventions is also not so easy. The concept is easy, but if we ask each people, they don't want to do that. They don't want to change lifestyle. And if we can help their, how can I say, the wrong lifestyle by the very, how can I say, safe medicine, that will be the hope of the people to maintain the health. So the prevention is not so simple. And also the prevention is not only driven by this type of things and the change like running like me or me. So I think everything, every type of the medical healthcare related innovation will be, will happen by understanding the heterogeneity of the nature of the disease, and that will be improved and make a new business, I think, in the future.
Because this is a business school, I'm a little bit more focusing on the structure of the research. And she mentioned the ecosystem. So participants might be the academicians and politicians and business people and educators and people, as you mentioned, in center. And that kind of the management is easy or difficult? So that is my fundamental question to ask you to come, three of you to come here. So if that is very easy, there is no way for the business school or management school to intervene. So it's better to leave the data and the AI to all of you. So no role for the business school. So I'm asking about the management issue of this kind of research or realization. Okay, I wish to raise this question to three of you.
So I can start from that. So I think that the management will be possible. And also the standpoint is a little bit different. For example, Nishimura Sensei talked about gathering the present medical information together and improve the medical process. That's quite important. It's because the current domain knowledge with the critical first part to improve the healthcare. This is the first step that is very important. But also, if we only stick to this knowledge domain, because this is based on the scientific framework in the past. If this is perfect, that's the end of the game, and that's maybe can do everything. But I don't think so, because I'm a scientist and I work in this field. The current domain knowledge is very important, but it's not sufficient for the better medical health care that can deliver by the current domain knowledge, which is electronized. So that reason that we need a second generation of the innovation. That reason that we are working in LECAN, which is funded by the MEXT, not by the cabinet. There is a AMED, but because, and also we are the, center of the natural science. And our concept is also have to, accumulate and synthesize with the other natural science. Otherwise, if this is only an exceptional way to understand the phenomenon, maybe that's wrong. So our approach is very basic, very basic. And again, that without the long history of the medical knowledge, we cannot make the next innovation. So there's no, I think, gap between the past knowledge and the present innovation. So this is the show in this picture. The circle and the square will be bind together. And this is the current domain knowledge with Nishimura Sensei's talk, and this is the framework. But on the other hand, AI have a more freedom. Lots of different approaches possible to give the values. So also different scientists have a different idea to use the AI to do the prediction. So, but we don't need to fight with that. Different approach is very important. Respect the difference will be the improve the science and technology. So the AI, also I put it in the purple color, will be the lots of different way, and not only nowcasting or forecasting, but also different type of the output will be possible by the AI technology. So again, I think different standpoint, but all of the people can work together. And again, the final part I would like to push is that the business player who can push the data-driven business will be the critical for to make a new industry in Japan. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
I'm asking about the management of the innovation, education, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, so maybe I say something on the drone. The METI has given the money to NEDO, and NEDO makes the UTM project, Unmanned Aerial Systems Traffic Management. And we are participating in this project, and the idea was to make it a new business. So the Prime Minister Abe-san has this Rob Revolution committee, and that's one of the results. So in our case, we make the whole UTM architecture and platform, and then several companies are involved, such as Rakuten and NTT Docomo, KDDI, and these players are supposed to make the real business cases, yeah, and I hope they can do. And on the other hand, there would be the flight management system. This is like a ATM flight management systems. This is a more like a governmental oriented activity, and in that case, there's a NEC and NTT Data and Hitachi, I think. So this is what I can say in terms of the business. The other thing is infrastructure maintenance. This is another, we are not part of this project, but there's a SIP, like a cross-ministerial project on infrastructure maintenance, and so we have been talking to some people there, and I think currently it's already running since 2014, and they have been more like focusing on inspection and repair. Yeah? It's not a predictive maintenance, it's right now just reactive maintenance. But as a next further step, they want to include IoT and big data and artificial intelligence for the predictive maintenance. Yeah? And this brings me back to Anegawa-sensei's comment. You have been talking about your lifetime and you don't believe in the database approach. We have the same problem to argue for predictive maintenance in infrastructure maintenance because a bridge can last for very long. Yeah? So this is, again, also there's a business part in that. It's 180 trillion yen. That's a lot of yen, I think.
I will ask Ms. Nishimura about management of ecosystem in the United States. Additional comments?
Yeah, as a United States, maybe I cannot say, but my approach is pretty simple. I usually start existing data and existing method. I believe in AI, and I also believe in my colleagues and professionals and young entrepreneurs. And from my experience, last 18 months or so with AI algorithm development, machine learns, and also the professionals learn from the machine. And so existing data analysis is not only the traditional analysis. From this analysis, we could create next problems, and next solution will come after that. So we need to analyze existing data first. And in order to create big data, we need to be open to share. That's a very important part. So ecosystem open to everybody who's interested in enthusiastic to do something new and innovative is very important. So management should be very open. So that's what I'm trying to do.
My final question to Mr. Sakura. This framework, it's very quite unique and very advanced. But is that this kind of the idea or view is shared by the other people in medical science or medicine or politicians? So how far is it advanced compared with Japanese standard or other countries' standard?
So I think that I have an opportunity to go to Europe and the United States and have lots of discussions. And from that point of view, our approach seems to be unique. But I cannot know everybody. I'm not a spy and cannot see all of the activities outside the LICAN. But we are making a great effort. And also, you talk about the management, but we cannot be completely independent. So always we are talking with AMED and the other government organization, also the cabinet, also Naikaku Kambo, and these people. So probably it's not fair to talk from my side, but always they respect me because they say that if we go all around Japan, there's no way, no algorithm to do the data analysis. So there is the natural language approach or the other lots of way, but based on the medical science, there's no good way for the reasoning. And this is published in the very established the journal like Cell, and like Robert Weinberg, who is the I can say the pioneer of the cancer oncogenes and cancer suppressor gene, clearly indicated that the reductionism approach have a limitation, but we don't have the alternative way to approach. So that's the reason that he will continue the reductionism approach, and this have a very strong relation with the current knowledge domain. So I think that this is the present situation. So I think that our approach is well recognized, and but nobody can know that this will be succeeded. Yeah, so we have to work hard to show the evidence that this approach will really improve the predictions and prevention of the disease. So this is what we are doing, and yeah, so still we are in the concept stage, but in near future, I hope we can tell our result based on evidence. Thank you very much for your comments.
Okay, so much for today's forum, and we invited the 3 speakers, and 3 agenda and themes are very interesting to the business school people and also the outside professional gathering here. So this conversation or debate would continue beyond this stage. And in September, for example, as I mentioned, we will feature the 2 sessions. One is health and housing. So that is September 22nd. And September 23rd is health and data. So as I mentioned, Watanabe Sensei would come and Sennen Kalte, 1,000 years patient record preservation and analysis. So 1,000 years, I'm not sure what does it really mean, but that might be the issue on September 23rd. So this kind of the discussion will continue. And thank you for the 3 lecturers here to come. And I feel a little bit sorry to waste your holiday. So, but I appreciate your presentations. Thanks again.